Guys, I first want to say stay until the end because I have a recording from a court hearing of J.P. Miller that I'm going to share with y'all, and it's pretty interesting. So as you all know, in 1998, J.P. Miller was 19 years old. He was indicted that year on charges of assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature. He was charged with hitting a woman twice with his vehicle at a high rate of speed in February of that year. In October of the same year, the victim filed a personal injury lawsuit against JP. Her name was Jennifer Garland, and she was 19 years old at the time. Reportedly, she was with her family sandbagging homes in a subdivision in Myrtle Beach. At the time the incident occurred, the roadway had been closed by authorities. There was some type of flooding going on in the area. There was a road closed sign, but JP ignored it. He went into that area in a truck with black tape covering his license plate. What's odd is that just minutes before, he was allegedly at the scene in a different truck speeding on the closed roadway. During that time, the people who were there doing the sandbagging told him to leave. But when he came back in a different truck, he started speeding in an attempt to harass or piss those people off, the ones who were sandbagging. At the same time of him speeding, Jennifer was walking on the road and was telling him to slow down. However, instead of doing that, JP sped up and he hit Jennifer with his truck, and that pushed her onto the hood of his truck. He drove with her on the hood for about 100 yards until he was stopped by a different person, and Jennifer finally was able to roll off the truck. JP then left the scene. As a result of this taking place, Jennifer was said to have suffered severe, painful, and permanent injuries. So JP was arrested on February 11th of that year. His bond was set for $5,000, and of course he was released the same day. When the case went to court the next June, he did not contest the charge. He said in court, in the hearing you're going to hear in just a second, he was just young and didn't really know what he was doing, so to say. He received a suspended sentence of 4 years, 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and he was ordered to pay court fees. Now, the video you're about to hear is from his pardon that took place in May of 2022. You will hear him and his attorney singing his praises of how he's started a church and how valuable and great he is to the community. And of course, his pardon was granted. Now, some people think that he was able to do this because he allegedly had connections within the church. And remember, in a court filing, his ex-wife said that JP managed to get a police chief from the church to help expunge his record. So that could have helped him greatly. Allegedly, reportedly, supposedly. Who knows? I want to give a shout out to Mandy Matney, who had this on her June 13th episode of her podcast called True Sunlight. And this podcast is working to expose JP and other corruption that takes place near her. Mandy Matney is a great journalist. I have been following her since the Murdaugh murders. So if you want to hear a good podcast, go over there to True Sunlight's podcast. She's excellent. Anyway, here's the recording from his pardon. Let me know what you think in the comments.
I can begin. My client, born May 20th, 1979, seeking a pardon for his assault and battery of high and aggravated nature. The incident date is listed as February 11th, 1998, and the client pled guilty in June of 1999. He received a 4-year sentence, suspended to 3 years probation. Probation was completed without incident. And it's been 20 years since then. My client has completely turned his life around. He's got a family, wife, kids. He started a ministry. And so we are seeking a pardon for this to restore his civil liberties. As our religion and Lord teaches forgiveness, we're seeking that from the state. So I'll turn it over to my client to explain a little bit more about his life and changes since then, the last 20 years.
First of all, when it happened over 20 years ago, the incident was I was driving a work truck through a wake zone after a hurricane, and the person that brought the charge or whatever said that the waves of the wake zone I guess knocked them over or something. And when I went to court, I was young and I didn't have a lawyer and didn't know anything. And a lady that was in the courthouse just told me to plead guilty. And so I went in to plead guilty, and the person who was bringing the charges didn't even show up because they had 3 or 4 warrants out for their arrest. And I never even met the person or saw the person ever in my entire life. And I didn't even know that I had this charge until a few years ago. We have a bunch of lieutenants and policemen in our congregation. And
okay, Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, let me tell you something. I'm sure your attorney will tell you we don't retry cases here. We just can't do anything about that. We just have the facts of the case
Okay, yes,
as
sir.
it is before. What we're trying to look at now is how have you changed? Why do you feel like you deserve a pardon? And some of the things you've been doing since all this happened.
I've started a church that has over 500 people in it each week. I started a homeless ministry that specifically takes vets that are homeless off the streets, gets them jobs with people in our congregation. We get them a place to live, get them transportation once they've completed our courses. I've started a Christian private school that is the most affordable school in all of Myrtle Beach, so that any Christian family that wants to put their child in a private school can do so. Like I said, I didn't even know this charge was on my record until recently, and you know, I would love to have the pardon just because I think it's the right thing for me, and I think it's the right thing to do in general.
How's it going to help you? What are you looking to do?
I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of forgiveness, and I think that it would, you know, with the lieutenants and the policemen in our congregation, just, you know, it just adds to my, I guess the things that I've accomplished in the past 20-something years. It just feels weird having a charge on your record like that, especially one of how it took place. It's just
And I think that because it's been 20 years since the completion of his probation, we're looking to restore civil liberties, and especially for a leader of a church, a person who's started educational programs and homeless vet programs. I think that restoring civil liberties for a man like this is important as an American and as a South Carolina resident.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the clarity there. And I'm not going to ask you about giving back to your community because your whole life looks like you're headed back, giving back to your community through your ministry, sir. Is there anything, Mr. Miller, that you haven't been able to tell us that you want to make sure this board knows today?
no, sir. I guess that sums it up. Thank you for your time.
Well, we appreciate you appearing today. Anything in closing, Mr. Brown?
Just that it's been 20 years again, and my clients, the change in his life is, it was brought on not by the state, it's by his own self-doing. And I think it's night and day from the 90s to now of what he's done, what he's accomplished, not for himself and his family, but also for the community as a whole in the state of South Carolina. And I think that warrants the restoration of civil liberties. He knows that the charge won't be removed from his record, but it's the forgiveness based on the life that he's lived, the exemplary life he's lived, and the goals and rewards that he sought for not only himself, his family, and the rest of South Carolina.